Welcome to Reuters Events Momentum AI Summit here in San Jose. My name is Richelle Carey. Joining me now is Michael Rosman, the VP of Marketing and Corporate Strategy with Verbit, really the industry leader in verbal intelligence. Michael, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me more about what it is you do at Verbit.
So Verbit makes words work, which means we capture the spoken word and then make it useful.
At its most basic, that's transcription, but it's much more than that.
Yeah, so we like to think of it starting with the capture of the spoken word, so that would be transcribing or captioning, but then understanding where's the value in that interaction. So what was the intent in the spoken words that we captured, and then applying them natively within the workflow.
What is the mission? What is your mission statement?
The mission is to make all verbal interactions accessible, insightful, and useful.
Okay, what does that mean?
So it means, we exchange information all the time, right? Anybody who's used Zoom or GPT realizes that we're in the middle of a revolution.
Yes.
Right? There's a revolution. Everything about speech technology is changing. So what we want to do is to make sure, we started from accessibility, actually. That's where we grew from. So we started with captioning, making venues accessible, like this venue, by the way. So we're working with Reuters on all of their events to make them accessible.
And I want to make sure people understand how big of a task that is. This is an event with hundreds of people in multiple rooms, multiple events. So what is Verbit's role in that?
So Verbit makes captions everything. It means we capture everything that's being spoken. It's going to be natively within the Reuters app in this case. And then you can not only follow it in the spoken language, which is English in this case, but you can also see machine translation live. So you're following on your personal device, on your phone or on your laptop. You can even follow if you're outside of the room because you step out for a moment, you don't miss anything. You can scroll back. So that makes it not only accessible for people who need it for hearing purposes, but also it just makes it so much easier to follow. The experience is elevated that way. Accents. People don't speak.
Yeah.
She just gets it much better.
Okay, so what is it now that you do beyond, you have all this information, all these words, you're talking about making it more accessible. What does that mean?
Right. So this is kind of the foundation. The foundation is to capture. So that can happen in an event. It can happen in a classroom at a university. It can happen for the media, right? So we do the same thing for CNN Live, all of CNN, the Olympics, and we make venues like the Sphere accessible. But the next step is where the value really lies. So I think the first 7 years of the company were on solving how do we capture accurately, and especially when you think of it, we really focus on speech-intensive industries. That means places where the words are really important. Okay, so some industries you don't talk that much in, but in media or in education or in the legal space, there's a lot of words. So we specialize in those verticals where we tune our engine to be very, very specific in understanding the language, the terminology, the intricacies of each of the industries. But the next step is to understand the value. So as an example, in the legal space.
We've talked about this example, and I'm excited for people to hear this because it's so interesting how you explain this.
Right. So what we do right now for lawyers is we help them transcribe live depositions and court hearings, anything, or even things that are like digital evidence. So think webcams, 911 calls, stuff like that. So we capture that for them so that they have it at their fingertips, and we can do it live, which creates the opportunity to help them out. So the way I think about it is we have an app for a lawyer. And then live within a deposition, they can get recommendations from the AI engine. What does that mean, right? So they can hear what's happening, and they can say, well, actually, there's a contradiction in what the deponent just said. Yesterday, he said something else, or somebody else in the case said something. So it can, in real time, suggest the next question, or suggest that maybe the witness is lying, right? So think
kind of what you say. It's almost like they're a second chair.
Exactly. Right. So second chair is actually the term that lawyers,
That's fantastic.
Right? So they have a second chair with them. They have, usually if it's an important case, they're going to have a second chair with them, kind of whispering in their ear. So I like to think of this as having like a whole class of second chairs. Think of you have all of the experts in the world sitting right behind you and whispering in your ear in real time. So you don't have to go back, wait for the next session, come back with questions. It happens all in real time.
Well, you described, though, the fact that the term is second chair, that might immediately make someone say, that's what I'm talking about. It's replacing people. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's not that, though.
Well, not exactly. Yeah. It's kind of, it's more like supercharging people. You're giving people superpowers. So it shortens the time from something happening, from, the interaction happening to the implications of it, right? It shortens that time to almost zero because you don't have to do any research anymore. I mean, think of lawyers have to scan through hours and hours of text, of depositions, of history, right? Other cases. All of that just happens in real time.
So data is really only as good as what you know what to do with it. Because what you're describing is an industry that is grabbing data, grabbing words, but the people that are getting out ahead of this are the people in the companies that know what to do with that. That's basically what you're describing.
I think that's a really good point because it really, anybody can have access to generative AI,
Sure.
Right? And I think a lot of these tools are accessible in a way to are generally available, but it's really important to know what to do with it. So like you mentioned, it's important to know what to ask. And
yes, that is absolutely it.
Yeah.
It's not going to make you smart if you're not.
Exactly. Right. So like in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
Yes.
where the answer to the universe is 42, but that's meaningless unless you know what to ask, right? So it's really important to know what are you going to ask.
That's wonderful. Anything else you would like to add about where Verbit is hoping to go in the future?
Well, I think we're just scratching the surface. Really. I think there's so many applications that are just starting to be discovered. I see that people talk about generative AI in a very kind of general way. They're not exactly sure what to do with it. It's like we have all these great tools, but we don't know what to do with them yet. And I feel like, we're starting to see the examples of where it becomes very, very practical, where it changes our lives in a meaningful way. And it's changing everything about, how we interact. And if we can get to a future where we're capturing everything, like all of the verbal information, think of how we capture photos of everything, right? Today, everything that's visual is captured and stored, and then you do something with it. But with speech, that's not happening yet. So what Verbit can be is that company where it takes speech, takes this fleeting, type of interaction and makes it useful.
So let me ask you one thing then. We talk about that you can only get the right answers if you know the right question. What do you think would be the best question, the guiding question for this industry going forward? What do you think that question should be?
Wow. That's a really good question.
Yeah, it is, because it's evolving, it's changing.
Yeah. I think it's not one thing, right? I think just like generative AI is or AI, like we talk about AI, but AI has multiple different elements to it. So like ASR, automatic speech recognition, is AI. It's been around for a very long time, but now with generative AI, it's other things. So I think it's a general term that covers a lot of abilities. So I think the question is, how do we harness generative AI and AI in general, right? How do we harness it to improve our lives in a responsible way, but just to create better outcomes, more accurate outcomes, and I guess reduce waste, right? There's so many things that we don't have to do, and if AI can do that for us, then that's the net gain.
Okay, so you mentioned ASR, automatic speech recognition, right? So there's so many things that are accessible to us, to the masses, in a free context. What is that? Where do you go with that?
Right. So we actually ran a survey recently, or we commissioned a survey about ASR, and we found that 70% of people use free tools at least for part of their needs. And what was also interesting, that 55% of those people claimed that they have issues with accuracy. So I think the generic ASR tools that everybody has access to, they get you so far. So for some people that just want to tick a box or get it more or less correct, that's fine. But when you want to get higher accuracy, they're still not there. So Verbit is really trying to crack the nut on that. That's who we came from. That's the core of what we do. And getting terminology correct is very specific. So, lingo is different in every vertical. The same word could mean something else in different industries. It depends on the context. Acronyms. There's so many things that you have to get right. So being very, very specific to a speaker, specific to a topic, that's the difference between being kind of okay and being, really good.
That will be the final word. Michael Rosman with Verbit, thank you very much.
Right. Thank you.